Hello, I hope everyone is doing well today. Sorry, I'm having a few issues with my video this morning, afternoon already. We have a lot to cover today, and I'm really grateful for you for your time. And so the icebreaker would be, if time or money wasn't an issue, what would you be doing right now? And I'll kick it off, so it gives you a few minutes to think about if time and money weren't an issue, what would you be doing right now? And I would either be gardening or on my paddleboard. Morning, Faye, how are you today?
I am well, and I would either, I'm Faye from APD, I'd either be gardening or sitting by the lake over in Wolfboro where I was yesterday.
Great. Hi, Julie, how are you?
Good afternoon. I have to second that. I think I live near Lake Winnipesaukee, so I would either be out sailing on the lake or at my little Guilford Beach.
Oh, hi, Sunny.
Hello, how are you all? I would either be painting or I would be somewhere on a cruise ship.
I can picture that. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Joanne. I'm Jessie Rady from the Couch Family Foundation, and I would also be traveling the world somehow. I think that's what I would do. And if it was just time that wasn't an issue, I'd probably be spending all day on the puzzle that I'm working on. So one or the other.
Okay. What's the puzzle about? What's the image that you're working on?
It's an illustration, and I think it's called the like Enchanted Bookstore or something. It's like a big bookshelf with like little elves and stuff on it.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a tricky one. Hi, Anna, how are you?
Well, I would also be gardening or biking across the country or some other country or somewhere far and long.
Cool. Hello, Lori, nice to see you.
Hi, I'm Lori Brown from Mascoma Bank, and I would be by water, hanging out by a lake or the ocean with my friends.
Sounds like fun. Hi, Sean, we are talking about if money or time wasn't an issue, where would you or what would you be doing right now?
This would be probably week 3 of my summer-long European vacation. Yeah, I'd probably be in the Mediterranean right now, which I will be soon enough, but that'll be August though. But it would have started a couple weeks ago, and it would go into September.
Nice. Hello, Amy.
I don't even know. I don't know if I can follow that. That's like that's a lot of planning going on there. Amy Brooks, Executive Director of the Early Care and Education Association. And I don't know, I don't know, maybe I would be probably just like walking along the beach somewhere warm, looking for shells that had some purpose in life. I don't know where the shells go, and maybe they do something really, really good to the environment or something.
Oh, that's great. Hi, Katie. We know that you're out there. Are you listening?
Hi, everybody. I am currently nursing a knee replacement. So I'm not looking my best, so you won't see me, but I'm here and I will fully participate. And if I could do anything right now, it would just be walk anywhere outside. I would be so happy. I would even be happy to be back in visiting my classrooms. So I'm kind of getting on the board end of things, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're glad that you are here. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to pull up the agenda. We have, I just need to click on the right. I don't have it at the top screen. Try that again. There's the... All right. So we have a lot of work to do today, but hopefully it'll be fun and meaningful work. The last meeting that we held, we tried to begin to pull together the North Star and the goals. When we first started, we were 2 different groups. So we came up with this North Star for the workforce and models group, which is the goal of the early childhood education initiative. This is the overall umbrella one. The goal of the Early Childhood Education Initiative is to facilitate an increase in high quality, accessible, and affordable early childhood education in the bi-state Upper Valley area. And before I hit into the rest of the goals, I was hoping we could do some updates. And Amy, can you give us an update on the workforce pipeline, what's happening in LEB, the RFP, the summer plans that we were talking about, and then a little brief update on the retreat on Saturday?
Sure. So the request for congressional directed spending to go down to the southern part of the Upper Valley Claremont area to do a hub has made it through the first round, which is great. The RFP we have not heard anything about. Currently, the current group of 11, we have one, I think is Katie, is she on leave or did she come back?
Which one? You lost
Did
me.
you have somebody that had medical issues and was
Yes.
out?
Yes, I did. And she is still out. She's got medical concern. She can't be safely with the children with her medical situation. She had to have surgery. So she is currently still out, but I think she definitely plans on coming back as soon as she can.
Okay, so that group of 10 is wrapping up. They're in the sub pool. They're still subbing. We're still working out a bunch of kinks in the system of using the sub pool and, getting, kind of explaining the program to directors and things like that. And we have some centers. We actually have quite a few centers in the Upper Valley that have specialty kind of employment paperwork, pre-employment paperwork that has to be done. That process, we're trying to create a process to navigate that kind of group. So they should be released in the next couple of weeks for hire. Right now, Tanika is down there last week, this week, I believe, next week, working with them on their resumes, helping them prep for interviews and get ready to look at potential employment centers. We do have some that may stay in the sub pool that won't be going out for permanent positions. We're planning for the summer program. We are looking at doing one cohort of school 16-year-olds to high school graduation. We're doing a group of those people and then a group of general population in an accelerated model over the summer for the students that haven't graduated from high school yet. It would be like a summer job learn and earn model, and hopefully they would be ready to enter the workforce somewhere at the end of August and could continue in the sub pool as for after school subbing or after school permanent employment or vacations, things like that. The modular has been delayed by everything under the sun. Sean's been giving us a hand trying to navigate that. So I think we have everything in place. We have the parking lot map done for planning board. We have the all of the technical paperwork we have that in hand. And then the last piece is for the building permit, we need something for with the electrician, and it looks like, in fact, I gotta hop a second to make a phone call to make sure that they're ready. We have an electrician going this afternoon. There has to be a quote of that work in the building permit application. So hopefully that'll be done today, and then we could submit the building permit application, and the reschedule delivery is Thursday, June 8th. And then they'll set it up on the 9th. Let's see. The retreat. Oh yes, we had an amazing group of early childhood professionals, center directors, and their second in commands at the Blue Water Lodge in Andover. Sunny was there, and unfortunately Katie couldn't go. Joanne was a guest as well. We had lots of special guests that were able to make our day extra special, and the group spent a lot of time talking about, challenges and networking about with resource providers, and talking about resources that are needed. And overall, I think one of the providers said she had missed the last one, but she'll never miss another one again, which makes me feel good. And then we'll be sending out that we have a team meeting this afternoon, and then we'll send out a survey, follow-up survey, to understand more about what their needs are and what they, how it went and what they would like different. And the consensus was they wanted to do it again in the fall, and that these in-person meetings, these in-person kind of just networking opportunities are so important right now. Sunny, I don't know if that is something you want to say.
Yeah, I think that was the general feeling of everyone just really appreciated being in the same space at the same time, and talking about the issues that everyone shares, no matter what their particular situation is. Everyone, all of us shared a lot of the same concerns, and Amy and her team put together an amazing day. The resources that they had available, resources being people resources, Joanne being one of them, just for all of the directors to chat with, and let them know what needs are and find out what resources are out there. And I have to say, Amy, one of the best things was your sticker wall, where you had all the resources outlined on the wall and stickers for each of us with our names and emails, and we could just put our stickers on the resources that we wanted more information about, so that we can get information that way. I know that was a last minute kind of thing, but that was great, and it really was a good day, and the food was amazing too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I concur. It was great. I left feeling very grateful to have been able to attend and to meet just so many wonderful people, and the connections were fabulous. So thank you for that. Thank your team very much too. There were some major goals that came out of that. One was education and rejuvenation. One was continuing to support the workforce. One was looking, and I connected Anna with you and Rebecca and Amy, that we can set up a time to talk about food support and that kind of restaurant model. And there was a lot of interest in that. So I thought that was very important. Then there were two others, because there were a total of 5. And I can't remember what the other 2 were.
Yep, I've got the list. There was this consensus around enhancing our mentoring training, or lead teacher training, really more in kind of pairing in person with the what online courses can do. And I think your word was rejuvicate.
Yeah.
Rejuvicate. The second was some early childhood education career mapping, and really showing where careers in early childhood can bring you. The third one was really kind of taking a look at categorical eligibility for childcare. Tanika had identified, she's our recruiter, she had identified that the barriers to either affording or lack of open spaces for potential employees' own children was a major factor in more than 50% of the people that she speaks to as potential hires. So that is a major barrier. The fourth was we need to just double down in stabilizing this workforce and building the workforce. And then the last piece was the food, trying to come up with some creative solutions to affordable food sources.
One other thing that really came out of this for me, and it wasn't necessarily just out of the retreat, but overall, the feeling of rebuilding the workforce, I see through the amount of people who are interested in participating, in the board. I was able to step down as president because there are more people who are interested in taking a role and taking that on. And I see that as a rebuilding step, that there are different people who are interested in looking at everything overall in the community, and not just getting stuck in their own programs, and they feel like they're part of the ECEA. And I think that's a big piece of the rebuilding, and moving up.
There's definitely good energy, and I thought, Amy, you and your team did a nice job of welcoming everybody, but also keeping folks on task. The activities that you had were good time length, and they were meaningful. And I thought that, as I was looking around the room, I didn't see anyone itching to leave or, not participating or being on their phones. It's like everyone was so engaged all day. I thought that was a takeaway. That was really amazing. It kind of shows that you've really connected with them, and you continuously said, we're here to work for you, so you kind of have to tell us what to do. So you kicked it off with that. And I also thought that Sarah Kay, the few times she spoke so eloquently, but also so supportive. Yeah, she's amazing. And just the wisdom that she brings and the respect that she has, it was wonderful to see too. And it was nice to meet Sarah V. I didn't know it when we all sat down on the bench, who was who, but having an opportunity to talk with her a bit and to talk with Joe Kenny, that was, I had left with a whole bunch of cards that I was emailing people that night as soon as I got back to say, hi, just saw you a couple hours ago, but I want, can you come to advocacy, or can you do some of the different things? So that was another great avenue, just the connections that we made. Sean, do you want to talk a little bit about your facility and our advocacy need work, which is a combo of workforce letting advocacy know what they need to do?
So a couple of things. Tomorrow I've got a meeting with the Architect Boys and Girls Club and the construction management firm REARC to basically the programming needs assessment has been completed. So they know how much space they need for each function. Looking at about 20,000 square feet. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps and work on getting some pricing for us, because we need that for our capital improvements plan as we go into the fall. So that's moving along actually slightly ahead of schedule, which is good news there. The other part of it is we applied for a $50,000 grant from the county for the use of their ARPA funds. They are committing $2 million of their ARPA funds to municipalities. Each municipality can apply up to $50,000, so we anticipate approval of that, which we will use to do some of the energy modeling to get that going initially here. Again, a bit ahead of schedule as to what we're going to be doing with that. It's important to use it up quickly, and I'll talk about that. Unfortunately, Joanne, you know why, but I'll discuss that in a minute here. So that's where we're at on facilities. In terms of the agreement with the Boys and Girls Club, I literally have it up on my screen. I've been working on it this morning. It's about a 20-page partnership agreement. One of the things I'm working on is how to articulate all of the things that we want from them. What I mean by that is obviously 51% of the childcare slots have to be low to moderate income. It's fairly easy to articulate that and the standards by which we're going to use to do that. But determining what the rate should be for folks in that range is a little bit more tricky. And I want the one I'm writing into the agreement is that has to be done on an annual basis and agreed to on an annual basis. But figuring out what that dollar number is, I have to figure out how to articulate that in the agreement. The other thing is they are required to pay competitive wages and benefits. Again, how to articulate that, and that gets approved on an annual basis. That's how the agreement is reading, at least the draft that I'm creating there. And then requiring a certain number of infant care slots, because that was one of our priorities. I have to figure out what that number is. We have a number in our programming design, but what should that actually be in the agreement? I have to finalize that piece. And then providing services during non-traditional hours and weekends, discussing how that concept is going to work. And then the programming for teaching childcare providers or training childcare workers, how we're going to articulate that in the agreement. All that has to be fleshed out. So I got some rough language in here, but I'm going to need some help from you folks to take a look at that and bounce that off. And we have an advisory committee as well, sending that to them and say, look, what do you think of this wording on here? And I'm guessing they can provide, they have better ideas on what the articulation of the language should be than I do, seeing they're in that profession. So I hope to get that done by the end of this week. But then again, I've been working on this for 2 weeks, and it seems that one thing after another seems to interfere with my completion of that effort. So there's that. And then Senate Bill 221, that is scheduled for, well, it was scheduled for executive session on the 17th in the House. They had a full work session on the 10th, and then there was a full committee work session afterwards on that. At least that's what was scheduled. An executive session on the 17th. I don't know if that actually occurred or what the results of that were. So I'm waiting to find out. That's to allow it to go to a study committee, which usually is not an issue anyway, because nobody is spending any money and nobody's committing to anything. So I anticipate that would not be an issue. But again, not knowing what happened at the executive session, I don't know the answer to that. The other part of that, I got an email from Christine D'Alessandro this morning regarding some legislation in the state of Texas, which is very interesting, very similar to ours that they had in there. And they actually did something a little bit different. They're making it an addition to their state constitution to allow up to a 50 to 100% property tax exemption for childcare facilities. And they do have the language in there in regards to if the childcare provider is leasing the space. Obviously, their state laws are different than ours. And the way that this reads in the language in there is their governor can't veto that, I guess, the way they do their process, and it would go to the voters to decide, which would be very interesting. So I downloaded both of those documents, which I'll share with Joanne. You can push those out to everybody else. But it's something worth watching as that goes into the summer when we start to deal with this study committee that we're going to have, because then we'll have a third state that we know of that has a property tax exemption, if it all passes or goes through the process in the country on that. And again, their language is interesting. It's not as complex as ours, but again, their laws are different than ours. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing we have to be concerned about is I found out on Friday that some of the negotiations that are involving the debt ceiling with the federal government involve clawing back COVID funds. Some of those completely clawing back some of the discretionary funds, and then the unused COVID funds that are existing out there, taking back 22% of those that have not been obligated yet. And that definitely affects our sector in terms of childcare. To what degree, I'm not exactly sure, but Senator Shaheen's office was putting that information out to NHMA first thing in the morning. We discussed that at our board meeting on Friday morning. So all depending on what happens this week and next week, assuming they get this issue resolved, we could see some clawing back of funds that we might have anticipated to address some of these issues. So we'll have to watch that closely. We obviously don't have any control over that, but seeing what the impacts of that are going to be are rather important. In the interim, it's critically important that we at the very least obligate these funds. I've obligated $152,000 to Vital Communities for the work that's being done to pay staff in this initiative. That is obligated because we have an agreement with them and we've encumbered those funds. But it all depends on what that language is and how it may change depending on what they agree to. If they claw back funds that are simply unused, not necessarily obligated, that would be quite a change from the way federal government does things. But these days, you just don't know what's going to happen down in Concord. So anyway, and I've got about $24,000 out of the $1.4 million that I do not have obligated in ARPA funds, which I will have obligated by tomorrow because I'm not going to lose anything. Send it back down there to Washington. So that is all that I have, unless there's any questions of me on those three critical areas.
Thank you. And if you could keep us posted, if you hear anything about testimony, anything like that, we will work with advocacy to get people there in person or writing whoever we need to write. So we definitely want to keep on top of that.
Yes, those study committees, when they actually, assuming that the study committee passes the House, and then of course has to get, if it gets approved by the House, then it's a matter of the governor signing it and it becomes law, and then they'll start their study committees sometime this summer. The report's due in November. So it'll be over the summer that they'll be meeting if everything goes as it's supposed to, as it normally would. And I'll let people know when those hearings are, and we can put together a full court press. We definitely need help from advocacy on this issue.
Great, we will do that. We had an update from Emily Tenenbaum in regard to the exciting Vermont child care legislation, historically passing. Now they are watching very carefully to see what happens at the next steps, including at the governor's level. And she said that she would keep us posted about that. In regard to wages and salaries, I did reach out to Sharon Harrington, Let's Grow Kids. And I saw an email in my box. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I will let you know if she has that information. The other thing I thought about, Sean, if you could write this down, with you, myself, Boys and Girls Club, and Amy, the advisory committee, we should probably have an advisory committee meeting in June, because we said to ECEA we would keep them posted, and it sounds like June would be a good time to let them know where everything is. So if we could coordinate that together, I don't know, Amy, people's schedules to do a Zoom meeting with the advisory committee, but I just don't want to forget that. And I think it's an important part of moving forward in a positive way for everybody. I will be meeting with Sarah Kay, Rick Mills, and Joanne Conroy on Wednesday. And let's roll up our sleeves and look at these goals that we are focusing on. I think that we can pull some of the goals from the retreat that makes sense for this group to work on. What I started to talk about, but I was on the wrong North Star. We worked last meeting to create a workforce and program models North Star, identify, develop, and evaluate strategies that promote bi-state sustainability, supporting the retention and recruitment of early childhood educators. And if I can't see everybody, so if somebody wants to make any changes to that, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, but I just can't have the screen up and see everyone. Sounds like, from what I can see, people are comfortable with that language. And working with Sarah Kay, she gave us a suggestion of, with each of our goals, we should be asking, what did we do and how much of it did we do? How well did we do it? And is anybody better off because of it? And you'll see that I've added that language under each of the goals. What we talked about last time, and Michael Bennett said, instead of trying to put all of it into the North Star, can we divide our action steps up and then answer these questions? So I went back in, I took the big ideas and put the language underneath. So build public awareness of ECE as a profession. I'm asking all of you, how will we know what we did so we can list it, but the numbers? So when we're building public awareness of ECE as a profession, I'll kick it off, working with advocacy to attend, participate, however, in a meaningful way with legislation coming through. So we could say how many letters we've sent, how many people have gone to actual events. We could, I'm thinking, Sean, of doing something around Week of the Young Child, and maybe a kickoff in the fall where combined cities and towns do something together that will help organize, because I'm hearing that kickoff time in October, November, before December is when we really need to get the awareness, because then they start meeting in January to really activate, and it might be a little earlier than that. But, you know, some kind of fall and spring events, and week of the young child. I don't know if they put the W in there, but I don't remember what that means. What other action steps could we do in regard to building public awareness of ECE as a profession? Those in the field or those here today, do you have any other suggestions?
Joanne, one of the things we're switching to is starting to go to podcasts for things. Just creating these short videos to articulate whatever the issue might be. We got a variety in the city. There's a lot more people that are looking that have time for short periods of podcast. There's a big article in today's, I think it was today's Union Leader about childcare, detailed article, went on multiple pages in there, talked about all the issues, and that's running up, of course, the legislation for funding in the state budget. We could certainly do that, but newspapers, you know, the readership of that is relatively low. But podcasts, people hit them on YouTube and places like that. They show up. They're easy. And then someone grabs it and it gets spun off, and they really can be effective, especially with the younger generation of folks. They get folks to pay attention to that. And you don't have to. They don't require real technical innovation in making them. You can sit in front of a PowerPoint and do that as part of that, record the voice, or use your phone. There's different tools that you can use. They're very inexpensive to make, and something that we should definitely consider.
I will bring that to advocacy. Any other suggestions about public awareness, building it? Okay. We will be able to measure that, and we'll be able to have the answer to number 3, of who's better off because of it, based on that work.
Joanne,
Sure.
I had a comment before you go further back to Sean's point. You might also want to think about tying that to some kind of a formal messaging campaign.
Terrific.
You know, in our work at the Early Learning New Hampshire, we've had a formal messaging program called the Bedrock of the Granite State. That's, you know, formal messaging around the benefits of early childhood, but you could also do something similar about a focus on the profession.
Where do we stand with discounts?
We didn't have a lot of interest in that. I think that would have to start early and be part of the advocacy group in actually going to places like BJ's. The paper mill said that it's a national level, so we would have to go on that, like, to the actual company headquarters to get anything like that. So it's going to need more than just local, and it will need local too. So that would be an advocacy goal.
This is Julie again. There also, and we could have a separate conversation about this, there are currently discounts available to programs through the State Early Learning Alliance ECE Shared Services platform. There are discounts available both for programs as well as staff. I'm not sure if that's what the question was about, but Early Learning New Hampshire would be happy to come and talk in more detail about that. Also, that relates to Amy's comment about interest in food supports. There are food discounts available through that as well.
Wonderful.
So
That
we
would
would
be-
certainly at Early Learning New Hampshire want to tie Upper Valley efforts into that existing platform to the extent it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That's a great bridge to know about. Is it listed on the website?
Yes, if you go to the Early Learning New Hampshire website, you'll see a link for
Great.
the platform.
We'll add that for the next agenda.
And we've had grant funding to make that available for free to all licensed programs. That grant funding is winding down, but we're still able to do that for a limited period of time so that programs can log in and access the online benefits for free.
And another piece of that program is the benefit of being able to use Acquire for a Hire, which is a recruiting mechanism, to use that without any charge. So, you know, it links to Indeed and LinkedIn, and you know, I've had a number of applicants through Acquire for Hire, and that it's only, Julie, that's only available to us through CELA, correct? We wouldn't
Correct.
be able to use that. And so
Correct.
if we had to pay for the CELA membership, that's a lot just to use if that's what programs are mostly interested in this area. So that's a big gift that
It's a huge benefit that programs, right, programs have loved that, as well as the telehealth service that's available through the platform. Folks are really liking that too. So there's a lot of CELA related benefits we could talk about. If you want to have somebody address that from Early Learning New Hampshire, we'd be happy to do that.
That would be wonderful to schedule something in September when we come back in the fall to kick it off as one of our goals, so everyone understands that would be great. So.
And Sean, if you have any undedicated funds and you're looking for ways to allocate those funds, certainly allowing access to Upper Valley programs to the CELA platform would be one way to do it. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'm down to my last 24,000. Like I said, I was the planning of the building. So if they don't take it back, that is.
I trust you will work fast.
Yes, government works at a lightning speed around here.
The second action step we talked about is to connect early childhood educators to networks, providing business-related technical assistance and capital access to optimize their business operations, lower operation costs, and increase their capacity. Does that also, Julie, connect with what you were just talking about? Or is it different?
It does, in that there are business supports available on the platform as well. I think it also relates to the other RFP that DHHS put out that Early Learning New Hampshire responded to, that's Childcare Business Improvement Program. There are several applicants for that RFP, and as Amy had said with the other one, we haven't heard anything, but that's another connection point if that were to be funded, whether it's Early Learning New Hampshire or another vendor.
And Amy has talked a lot about do what you love to do and try to get somebody else to do the stuff you don't like to do. So under this, I'm wondering if, I know that there's the grant writer, there's other supports through ECEA. I guess I'm wondering for folks in the field or anyone in the committee, are there particular networks that we, through Vital Communities, can connect people with that we can be of help?
I think certainly with regard to access to capital, there are a number of ways to connect programs to capital. I worked previously with the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund before I retired. They have a childcare loan program, but I think to identify those financial resources, USDA, banks, to put together a comprehensive list of those kinds of resources could be beneficial. And it's the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, and the Vermont Community Loan Fund has a similar loan program so that the Upper Valley programs could tap into those resources as well. And then grant funds are obviously a whole separate category of need.
Any other thoughts about goal number 2? What action steps we could take to support? Amy wrote, Vermont's been setting up regional BBF hubs. What's a BBF hub?
Building bright futures, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they're working on that.
Okay.
Courtney Hillhouse could update us on that. And then the other thing, oh shoot, I keep forgetting it. Oh, is Allison Chisholm with the Hannah Grimes.
Yep. I asked Michelle if she might want to join our advocacy group. Some of you might not know, Michelle came back after maternity leave and she spoke to me. So she is Allison's supervisor. Allison had been filling in when she was part of our committee for Michelle until Michelle came back. What I learned at the meeting, and I didn't know, is that her background is being a lobbyist, and that she is a parent who has completely struggled with early childcare and fully wants to support the efforts that we're doing. She's one of the people I reached out to as soon as I got home. So if she could potentially be on our advocacy committee or this committee, or however she could help, would be huge with her background. So that was another wonderful thing I learned on Saturday. Great. So we'll be able to know how well we did it and who's better off because of it once we have those presentations lined up. Then we have identify and support opportunities for cooperative procurement of services. And I'm wondering, Anna, is this where you can picture the food support and creative solutions?
Yeah, we actually just got off a call with our development director at
Mhm.
Vital Communities about that. It's all still in baby stages, but yeah, I think there is space for this group to support that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. This was a goal that was created before I came in or on board. And I wasn't quite sure of the conversations that happened prior to my coming in about cooperative procurement. It never really was a focus of this group over the last 6 months. For people who were part of this work, can you give a little background and perhaps what people were thinking of in regard to cooperative procurement? Was this big, like propane and electricity and things like that, or paper supplies and materials? Does anyone remember?
It was all of those things. When we talked about it, was sort of like looking at that CELA model there. And could you buy insurance cooperatively? Liability insurance, health insurance, certainly supplies. There was a whole range of things. In other words, what was possible that could be purchased cooperatively to reduce cost for childcare facilities?
And would it only be purchasing that would fit in here? Because I also think of things of like shared HR and benefits and other things from the employee and management administrative side of things. Is that a different category, or is that part of this same idea here of any opportunities to share cost, services, and anything that creates overhead?
There was a talk about that. In fact, there was also about IT, and we were looking at the model from I can't remember his name, CCR Partners, that did just that. They're an entity that creates these support elements for a bunch of businesses. They'll provide the workers' comp coverage and the staff to do that, HR functioning, IT functioning, administrative support, all those sorts of things. And they do that, that company. It's Dean's Carpet One he owns. I can't remember his name right now, out of Manchester there, but they do just that.
Accounting as well, and I also think about looking towards some what some healthcare models have used for certain types of practices, not as much here, but in some other states, like the Advocare models, and another place where you have a separate entity that deals with kind of all the administrative processes, all these things that we've talked about for multiple different entities to free them up to focus on actually what the services they're providing. And if done right, I would think that could have a huge impact on a childcare model, because what I see from the providers here is they just don't have time for this stuff. They don't have lawyers, they don't have accountants, they don't have the HR staff, and they're trying to do it all themselves because as an individual, they don't have the money to hire all the outside entities to do it. But if they could share it with multiple entities, it would help.
Where would be a good place for me to start? This is not an area I have a lot of background knowledge in, but I definitely would be willing to connect people, to have the conversations. Where might Vital Communities start to connect with people about this idea?
There is a lot of work, this is Julie again, that's been done nationally through Opportunities Exchange. And again, Early Learning New Hampshire has been very involved in that in terms of looking at different shared services models that would get to Damien's point about how do you build those administrative functions. And then what Sean was referring to is CCA Global in Manchester, and they actually created the early childhood platform that I was referencing, so that that's available nationally. But again, it's building on this need for shared services at all different levels. So I think it's a big area of both interest and possibility. But we could certainly invite somebody like Louise Stoney from Opportunities Exchange to speak to this group. She's done a lot of work nationally, again, looking at these models. And the platform, the ECE Shared Services Platform, is one model, is kind of a ground level sharing. And then there are levels beyond that that get to some of these other issues that were identified.
Julie, would you connect Louise and I together?
Sure,
To,
I'd be happy to.
With you to have a conversation about that and schedule them to come in. That would be fantastic. Amy, I see your hand up.
At this retreat, I think what we see as a solution or the need, and what directors and providers are seeing as a solution and need, are two different lenses. And what I discovered at this retreat, I really wanted to explore with them more about some sort of how can we take things off of your plate, like collections and billing and payroll and all these things. And they didn't bite. The only thing they bit on was the food, the collective food, kind of solution, but they're not ready to go there. So I don't want to build something and have it not kind of fly. I don't want to. I really thought that we would get there now. I had a long, it kind of like, that was where I thought we were going to go at the retreat, and that is not where they really were focused. They're still kind of focused inside their own programs. And there's nothing, I know that I was talking to Frankie, what was her last name? Over at the Seacoast, Julie, that did some work over there, and they really have to be ready for it and open for it to hit, or it's like you can't put it upon them. And what the message to me at this retreat was, we are not ready for that. We are still kind of just in our own recovery mode inside our centers, and they are not, they're interested in programs and support, but not in that collective kind of view yet. Maybe, you know, at some point we can get there, but I just don't want to put a lot of time and effort into building something. But if they are into the food, if they are interested and see this need to reach out of their safe space into this food collective idea, maybe that could lead to other things. But I just want to, I thought we would get there at this retreat, and that's not where people are. And so that's not the effort that the ECA is going to put forward.
That's a critical point, Amy, in terms of that developmental readiness. But I think it's a separate question, maybe for this group broadly, in terms of shared education and knowledge, whether or not this group wants to invest in learning more. But I think you're absolutely right. And in some states, the models have evolved out of crisis. Programs at risk financially of closing have come together under one umbrella organization to save them. That's a whole different set of circumstances than asking people to voluntarily opt in.
And that's why we actually, in our group, that went much lower on the list as a priority, because we were getting the same sort of feedback that was not a top priority for folks to focus on right away. So we didn't. We went, we focused on the facility piece, and we focused on the property tax exemption and the zoning regulations. So we put our effort in, because we got that same message before, because it does take quite a bit of coordination to make that work. And when there's already a model out there, and I guess there was some concern that model was, I guess the best way to say it is, some folks were not convinced that model was a good model to operate on, the CELA model. They had concerns about it, and they weren't joining it. So we kind of held off on that one.
It continually comes up in conversations that I've had, and I think if we could have it as an agenda item to learn about what is happening out there, for this committee to hear it and know that there are things happening, and that door opens, we'd be able to move forward more quickly, rather than you have a lot of background knowledge in it. And this kind of conversation comes up at least monthly, and I knew it was a past goal. Is there a comfort level in the fall of having a conversation about what's out there, what other organizations could put this in place, and then just share with ECEA that there's a conversation, and when they're ready, the support's there to help them go in that direction should they want to? Or do you not want to have this something that we focus on in the fall at all?
Sunny, I'll go to you first.
I feel like this is something that we as a group can work on proactively, separate from what ECEA is seeing, because I feel that programs are more ready to access something that they feel is already in place, rather than the hypothetical. Well, would you use this if, you had shared HR services, or would you use this if you had shared legal services? If there were models that, could be presented, and so this group could be working proactively so that, a year and a half from now, there's a model that you can say, hey, look, this is what's available. And this is how you access it, and this is how it will help you. I don't feel it's something that is needed or wanted right now, but I think in the future, if there's a program that people would opt into it.
And I also think about it in terms of the context of developing brand new centers as well. So I think there may be two separate issues, what we do that would be the most support for existing providers. But when we get down to the next, I think what's one of the next things on the list is ideas, well, how do we make it easier to create and develop new centers in areas that don't have any centers currently, especially in a rural environment? And this is one of those areas where if you have already in place a network and system where you say, well, here's how you can handle your HR, your IT, and all these things jointly with others, it is a potential benefit for decreasing the startup costs for it and making it more accessible for new centers to start up in more rural environments where they might not otherwise.
So what I'm hearing is it's a big picture item. And then do some learning, building our capacity as what's out there. And then not develop a model, but when we know what's out there, begin to approach the professionals in the field and say, did you know you can have access to this, this, and this? But not put it on anybody, but definitely build it up so that they know the support. That's what I'm hearing. So I'll keep that one. We'll be able to know how well we did it by the people coming in and having conversations with us. We'll be better off because of it, but also we might find some gaps that we're unaware of. One of the goals that we talked about was identifying means to decrease startup cost for new ECE professionals. And I guess that includes both home-based and centers. What are you picturing this to look like? And who should we be connecting with in regard to decreasing the startup costs? Was this a conversation about trying to get a hold of landlords and saying how centers could actually be great as tenants? Is it that kind of work, or what kind of work are you picturing?
Oh, I'm picture this more in the terms of you have to have models in place for folks. I think in terms of like a business incubator where they have the resources and information they need to figure out just how you go about doing this. I mean, it ties back into the access to the grants and funding resources and capital. We found out here in trying to develop a center in Randolph. I mean, it's an overwhelming task for most folks, even for childcare, folks with a childcare background and a business background to do on their own. So we need to make it easier to have a system in place, a business model, things like if there are shared HR resources, a guide to how you go about doing this if you want to, develop a new center in an area. I mean, we've had, a team of very sophisticated folks who working on this for years in our town doing it, and it's just not something that would work organically right now. So we need to learn from some of these efforts and put together a manual, so to speak, on both resources and how to make it easier for folks to do it.
Are there key organizations that you connected with that were very helpful?
Well, for us at the beginning was Let's Go Kids, and then getting consultants and various other folks in place are, Mountain Economic Development Corporation, but it was a very, there wasn't any one-stop shopping source, and it was a very long and arduous, word of mouth and, having the right things in place at the right time. I mean, not something that would be easily replicable in the same way. And we still get the calls all the time from places like you have a town like Rochester or, small community that needs to start. Well, how do we go about doing it? And there's no easy set of resources to point folks to at the moment.
I never get the lettering right. I'm thinking of the Vermont, is it EAYC.
What is
We
it?
had somebody come and talk with us, and it sounded like they did a lot of work.
AEYC.
Okay. What does that stand for? So I can.
For the Association for the Education of Young Children.
Thank you. Would they be an organization to take this kind of work on to partner with us, or who would be? That's, I know I'm not even going to ask New Hampshire because we're all going to go, there's nobody in New Hampshire, but Vermont seems to have a lot of structures in place.
So for family-based or home-based childcare, the ECEA does have the, we're supporting that homegrown effort. What we need is match funding for them. There's a plan in place, there's a budget in place. So anyone who has been interested in family-based, home-based care can come through that program in the Upper Valley, both sides of the river, and there are resources that we can connect them that are intact in each state. The for center-based is different. I just got an email over the weekend of a person in Charlestown area that wanted to start up a program, and this is like the second or third time I've heard someone say, is there a corporation? Is there a corporation with facility that would offer the facility and contract the person to come in embedded in the facility? So they're looking at, is there a possibility to partner with Wellen Engineering in Charlestown areas? Largest, so it's things like that. So I mean, it doesn't have to be in Charlestown, it could be like it could be in Claremont, it could be in you know, Enfield or whatever. But if somebody's interested and this person's a certified teacher, what would that look like for people to, you know, partner with a business to open a childcare within their facility?
So are you kind of the resource for home-based and centers for Vermont and New Hampshire in regard to Damien's point about it's just so hard to know what to do, when to do it, how to prepare to do it?
So we've been at the homegrown work through the family childcare efforts has always kind of been there. We've been supporting them in their homegrown plan with the city of Lebanon. There's this goal of supporting 3 family childcare startups in the year 1 and year 2. We have 2 for this year so far. And there's money in that budget if we can match it 100% to do the startup and to get them Wonder School and all of that. The center-based is a little trickier. A lot of the people that are coming forward want to do a center-based privately owned, and that's kind of where we have to connect with. Well, first they need a business plan, so we either connect them to their regional development corp or the business hub in Vermont to start with their business plan, and then talk about what funds they need in order to get started.
Yeah. And we do have the, you know, the local, you know, economic development corporations for the various regions, but they're going to vary quite a bit in their experience with childcare. And what we really need is that type of entity that really just specializes in or has all these resources and knowledge specifically to a childcare center, because it's such a unique beast in terms of economic business development. I mean, it's a very different than the type of stuff we normally do for a Pompanesett Mills or an LED Dynamics. You need the right combination of expertise and consultants. A lot of that's out there, but it needs to be, you know, put together in one place, but based with a center-based design as opposed to the which is much more complicated than the small home-based centers. And the way a lot of our legislation and rules are going, and it's really, you know, moving towards center-based programs when possible in certain areas. At least that's how I see things going, just to keep things sustainable.
So Amy, there's not a specific manual that people could look into. It's kind of, people have the steps in their heads who've been in the field a long time and help guide that way.
So the licensing regs is one thing. What people don't have is money to open a to a center-based program. They need to have their workers' comp up front. Excuse me, hang on a second. Okay, so it's kind of like the cart before the horse. What we have done with a couple of people is we've kind of steered them to a small family-based program and then grow from there. But you know, they have big dreams, but they don't have any money. They don't have a site. They don't have most of the people we've encountered don't even have the ability to be the director, which is a major barrier. They lack the education requirements to be the director, so they'd have to hire a director, which is impossible. I think the other major challenge is you need to get to that like 85% capacity to be profitable, and they need staff to do that. So I don't know how they're going to find staff and open, and it's just a tricky time to try to start up.
But if we are heading toward center-based, we're going to have more people not sure where to go or what they have to have in place to open a center for a city or a town if they head in that direction. Like, they have the funding, but they're going to have to go through all these hoops, kind of a thing. Okay, we can look into that.
And you know, we've gotten some people along the way, like, oh, do you want to talk to the loan fund? Do you want to do this? And they don't even have a business plan. So we have to slow them down, kind of reconnect them. Yeah, it's kind of a very, like Damien said, it's a very complicated process.
And then you have the other issue that we see out there all over the place, which is towns or locations that don't even have, they're not a childcare provider who wants to open a business. They're saying we need a childcare center in our town. But how do we go about developing one, locating a provider, doing all that? So it's that idea that there almost needs to be kind of that franchise model out there where somebody can say, okay, you go to the franchise, here's our model. Here's how you go about setting up the model, the grants, the licensing, everything else that they can use to start, you know, get the process going and to develop that business model, attract a provider. And it's otherwise we're going to end up in a place as in Vermont where we have good education, better funding and resources, better legislation, but it's you know, actually developing centers outside of Chittenden County to serve the areas that need it it's just not going to happen on its own.
Damien, this is Julie again. I think you're speaking to a lot of work that's been done as I put on my old hat in the CDFI world with community development financial institutions like the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. A lot of the larger CDFIs nationally have developed some of those manuals about how to develop a child care center or a family child care home. And I think what you're speaking to is the need to develop something like that for Vermont and New Hampshire. And whether, again, that takes staffing and expertise and funding to do, but there are models that currently exist that have been developed through other CDFIs nationally who have taken on exactly what you're talking about, the challenges of this particular business model and how do you develop childcare where it's needed. So that's something else, again, that we could look at.
Julie, what does CDFI stand for?
CDFI are community development financial institutions like Vermont Community Loan Fund and New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. So they're mission-based lenders and many of them have had a particular focus in childcare for a number of years. So that some have developed these types of resources that Damien is speaking to. And there's also a national facilities network of these, a national network of these organizations that I used to be part of when I was at the Community Loan Fund. So there may be ways to draw on that expertise.
Julie, do you cross into Vermont in our region?
I think the Community Loan Fund, again, I'm retired from the Community Loan Fund. I think they can finance on border towns, but again, I think in Vermont, you've got the Vermont Community Loan Fund as well that does childcare lending. So I think that those are resources that you want folks to be aware of, as we talked about previously. But I think this notion of having a manual, a how-to manual, Damien is right. There's long been a strong need for something like that. And I'm just saying it has been done in other parts of the country. A lot of this work has been done in California, and I can share some of those examples if folks are interested, but we don't have it for New Hampshire and Vermont.
I would definitely be interested, and I can pass them on to other folks. I saw, Amy, you wrote in Wonder School. See you later, Faye. Thanks for joining us. What is Wonder School? What was that related to?
So Wonder School is a franchise type of model that has been used with family childcare in Vermont for startups. I don't know, Julie, if you know any more about Wonder School than I do, but I know that I've sat in the FCC meetings, the family childcare meetings, and the brand new providers that started with Wonder School loved it. It's more like the people who've been in the field for 30 years don't want to change how they do things, but so it helps them with licensing. It helps them develop their policies, their tuition costs, their budget, their business model, actually can help with collections. I think one of the things that came up at the retreat was boundaries. Like just taking your work home with you, parents calling you at home. Family childcares are kind of just by the nature of the beast are in that kind of situation naturally. They're people to drop because they're at their home. So drop off a half hour early, pick up a half hour late. They kind of take advantage. And Wonder School really helps them set boundaries and that they are a small business and they are not just a drop-off service. So it may be something to look into more. I don't know, Julie, if you have more.
No, I think you know more about Wonder School than I do, Amy. Thanks for that.
And that's Vermont and New Hampshire, or just Vermont?
Yeah, it's a franchise. Anybody can access it.
Yeah, it's available nationally.
Thank you.
And Amy, to your point about family childcare, I think there's low-hanging fruit for us to think about, and that's access to mini grants for family childcare startup. If we really wanted to prioritize that access to startup funding is really critical for a family childcare provider, and often that's a huge hurdle that you may have someone first, as Amy said, they need to be qualified, but then those startup costs can be a real hurdle. And it doesn't take much in grant funding to make a difference there. If you could raise funding for a small pool of grant funds.
And we have developed the FCC group from the PDG work, developed a 4 or 5 phase model and costed it for startup, which is actually what UNH did with the PDG funds. For family childcare, they use that model. So I can send that to you, Joanne.
Great, and then I'll share it with the rest of the committee. So I think in the next meeting, we'll circle back around to this goal and try to streamline it a little bit as to what we're actually want to do and the timing for the next couple of months on that, and see what resources are available to share. Amy, who would be the point person at the ECEA to talk with Anna about what we should have on our Vital Communities website, and then maybe have a link? I don't know if it's easier to have a link right to the ECA, because then when, I don't know if it's K2, would be K2. Yeah, got it. so that when you update, Body Communities automatically updates, so that we have the same information rather than ECA updates and then we're replicating it or we're a couple weeks behind. Do you think that would work best, Anna? Link to the ECA website?
Yeah, I think so. We already have couple of links to the ECA webpage on the resources list. So
Yeah, it keeps coming up as far as where do people go for information, and it seems as everything goes back to that organization pretty much. I don't know if we want to keep that as a goal or just note that it's been done and that we have links on our website. Don't know if there's more work that needs to be done in that area. Can you think of anything?
yeah, we could have a section of like the ECE initiatives partners and then have links to all of their websites.
Okay. All right, great.
I'm meeting with our communications team tomorrow, so I can bring that up, see if they have any ideas too.
Yeah, and so at the next meeting, we could be more specific, would be to make sure that we can measure whatever the work is that's being done would be super. And then the last one that we actually kind of started it off, I think that's with talking about the connection with advocacy. So as things come through the workforce group, to then move it on to advocacy with very clear objectives as to what we want them to do or need them to do to support the efforts of the workforce and program models. I wonder if there's any other goals that you would want to consider. These goals will go from June into the fall, and then probably October, late September, early October, we'll set up our next goals to go through the year, because we'll have a better sense of the legislation that's coming through, to know, just like we had no clue how far Vermont or New Hampshire would go with ECE legislation, but we know it's still out there and we need support. We know that there are some activities that we can do to increase awareness of the profession, advocate for the profession, which will then help workforce. The other thing that Amy and I talked about in regard to workforce is, it's only been a little conversation, but potentially a connection with Hartford Area Tech Center to restart a program that they used to have for early childhood education. They also have an adult program in the evening that might connect with some of the folks that are working during the day, but have an interest in going into the field. And so that's a workforce concept that I'm going to just continue talking with people about. And then if there's interest, work with Amy and others as to where they could do their site work, including potentially the new facility that Sean runs, or perhaps if they're in your area, Damien, you know, connecting and getting hands-on experience there or at other home-based centers, kind of a combination. But that's percolating out there, and there's definitely interest from the Hartford Tech. Their executive director herself has 2 children, where she's experienced not being able to have childcare or having it close, and so it's near and dear to their hearts, and also their staff who can't come back to work because they can't find childcare. We had that in our school district with paras and teachers this year too, so it's really impacting everybody. Sunny, did you have another idea?
Well, I was just gonna say, Damien, I think that the Randolph area Career and Technical Center still has their program also, that's, you know, a connection for, you know, internships and, you know, after school and that sort of thing in Randolph.
Great. Any other business people want to bring up today? We did a lot of work in honing in on our goals and things like that. Looking for hands. Not seeing any. It's 1:52. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. It's certainly a beautiful day out there today. Thanks for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.